In the November 30th, 1993 edition of the Punch newspaper, the irrepressible Nigerian political activist and human rights campaigner Omoyole Sowore described late Pascal Bafiao, who at the time was president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, and Mr. Adams Oshiomhole, who also at the time was deputy president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, as conspirators in the politics of staging labor strikes. Omoyole Sowore was charitable in his description of both labor leaders. While the politics of late Pascal Bafiao was understandable, this was a labor leader who operated from the right of our ideological divide, who made no pretense about where he stood on issues that affected our polity, more particularly as they touch on the establishment. Adams Oshiomhole, on the other hand, simply cast himself as that individual who runs with the hare and hunts with the hound. Adams was a labor leader who was in bed with the military at the time and who had a foot in the politics of the left of our country, deploying labels, ideological magazines, languages of the left to buy support from comrades on the left. But he was a petit bourgeois labor leader who adorned in China's Mao's expensive suit to deceive Nigerians. And that deception came to its height in the immediate aftermath of the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. Adams, who doubled as General Secretary of Nigeria Textile Workers Union, did not show empathy or support for the growing opposition against the annulment of June 12. It's on record that he never participated in any of the protests organized by Campaign for Democracy. They harrow ahead against the annulment that year, and in many years after 1993, when the presidential election was annulled. Adams, as General Secretary of General Secretary of Nigerian Workers Union, superintended a union within an industry that bled to death without a single outcry from the General Secretary against the military regime at the time that oversaw the death of the Nigerian textile industry. So I find it very amusing, if not surprising, that a few days ago, Adams stood on the hallowed floors or chambers of the Senate of the National Assembly to describe a man who gave his all in delivering to Nigerians one of the most transparent, freest presidential elections we have witnessed in the history of our country. I'm talking here of late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. Adams described him as a coward, as someone who refused to immolate himself simply because the military regime at the time, using individuals like Nzeribe and Abimbola Davis to scuttle a presidential election that he superintended. I find it amusing that Adams, who could not join Nigerians in the streets throwing stones at the establishment, the military establishment for annulling presidential election, could, after many years, stand in the hallowed chambers of the National Assembly to describe a man who, in my opinion, showed honesty, transparency, vigor, strength, courage in delivering to Nigerians one of the most freest and transparent presidential elections. The question I would invariably ask here, in deconstructing Adams Oshiomhole, is this: who is Senator Adams Oshiomhole. Well, as you all know, he represented the North Senatorial District of Edo State in the hallowed chambers of the Senate of National Assembly. And he cut his teeth as president of Nigeria Labour Congress. And in cutting his teeth, perhaps that forms the basis of his recent claims that at the height of the campaigns of Nigerians against the annulment of June 12th, he was arrested and detained by operatives of Director of Military Intelligence. Adams wasn't truthful when he made this statement. Adams was arrested and detained sometime in 1997 after Abacha had clamped down on the Nigerian Labour Congress and appointed a sole administrator. His arrest and detention was not in respect of his opposition to the annulment of June 12th. It was in pursuit of a personal ambition to become president of the Nigerian Labour Congress. Ban for campaign had been placed on labor leaders across the length and breadth of our country. But Adams went ahead campaigning for his presidency. It was on the basis of that he was arrested and detained. Again, and this is fundamental, in the history of our country, particularly between the late 1980s and, of course, late 1990s, in all the political battles and landmarks drawn by opposition forces, particularly in the pro-democracy movement and the student movement, the Nigerian Labour Congress was absent in some of the big struggles, big fights of those years. Notably, the struggle against the removal of oil subsidy in 1988, which was launched by progressive elements within the National Association of Nigerian Students, and the now historic anti-SAP protest of 1989, which again was embarked upon by progressive elements within the National Association of Nigerian Students. Both policies, particularly the removal of oil subsidy and the decision of the military regime at the time to enunciate oppressive economic policies that created poverty of Nigerian workers, found silence in the quarters of the Nigerian Labour Congress. At the time, Adams was the deputy president of the NLC. And for somebody who makes some claim to progressive politics, his voice was not heard at the time. And the NLC kept mute as Nigerian workers went from one oppressive economic policy under the military regime to another. That it took the National Association of Nigerian Students to wage an economic war that should have been the war of Nigerian workers and Nigerian Labour Congress at the time against our military regime, the military regime that was in government, the military regime at the time. So it is bemusing, outlandish, if not ludicrous, for Adams, who had the opportunity of joining the masses of our people in the streets to oppose the annulment of June 12th, to now stand in the hallowed chambers, some donkey years after, to claim that the man who put his life on the line in defense of the elections that he conducted was guilty of cowardice. Shocking? Surprising? That is the man, Adams Oshiomhole. For Professor Humphrey Nwosu, and in the voices of Nigerian nurses who sang in Agbo a few days ago, I can only render this to his honor and to his memory. Now a hero you be, oh, we not get another hero. Now a hero you be, oh, hey. Now a hero you be, oh, we not get another hero. Now a hero you be, oh, hey. Professor Humphrey Nwosu, you came, you saw, you conquered. May your dear soul rest in power. God bless you.